Today we're going to be learning Shabbat Daf Kuf Gimel. We're going to start all sorts of interesting topics. We're going to get into writing on Shabbat. Okay, today's shiur is dedicated by Deborah Lewis in honor of Janet Lashes and by Sima Greenberg in memory of Paula Zager Zichrona Livracha. Before we start, I wanted to address something that somebody asked me yesterday. I got two different questions and it made me think that maybe I should go into this a little bit more. The issue that we started with yesterday was an issue about somebody throws something and starts off the act being shogeg, being accidental about it, or unwitting, and then it moves into mezid, right? In the middle, all of a sudden somebody realizes, wait a minute, I did something on purpose, and then it finishes b'mezid. The issue with shogeg and being obligated to sacrifice is always it's got two sides to it. On the one hand, it allows you to get let's start with the other direction. By having to bring a sacrifice, it's a financial responsibility, it's a headache, you have to get it to the Beit HaMikdash, it's a responsibility, you're basically getting a punishment. Now in this case, we're saying you're exempt from the punishment. You don't need to be punished. And it's actually strange though, because you actually did something almost worse. Right? You have to bring a sacrifice because you did something that's not great. You weren't careful enough. You did forget, but forgetting is always a matter of, it wasn't like you shouldn't have known at all, what we would call ones, something in between. So we make you responsible for it. In this case, you're kind of in between shogeg and mezid. You weren't intentional about it fully, but you also weren't unwitting fully. And you're in that category of in between. And in this case, you're not obligated to bring a korban. So you might think of this as, wow, we're being lenient with you. You don't have to bring a sacrifice. But since sacrifices have a flip side, which is it actually helps you because it provides you with atonement. In this case, you're kind of stuck. Normally, how do you atone for your sin? Either you bring a sacrifice if you were unwitting. If you did it intentionally, generally, again, with Shabbat, you would get stoned, and that would provide you with atonement, but you'd be dead. But theoretically, we want to give you some atonement, but you can't get it in any way here because your action is not defined as mezid and it's not defined as shogeg. So you're kind of stuck. So on the one hand, you're not financially responsible to buy a korban and you don't have to go through the process. On the other hand, it's not so helpful for you because since you're worse, you're in between shogeg and mezid. And I'll give you a good parallel. It's the same thing with the ir miklat. When someone has to go to a refuge city, when he kills someone accidentally. So again, the refuge city is like it sounds. It provides you with refuge. It protects you from the person who wants to kill you. On the other hand, it's also a punishment to have to be stuck there all your life or until the Kohen Gadol dies is a bit of a pain in the neck, and it's a punishment. So again, you're in this in-between, and there's certain cases where we say you don't even have to go and you don't even need the protection, and there's some places where we say, actually, you're karov lemezid. You're in between the shogeg and mezid, and we're actually not going to allow you to get that protection. So you don't get the punishment, but the punishment comes with protection and you don't get that protection because you really are more responsible than you should have been. You're not exactly mezid, so we won't kill you for killing this person, but you're also not exactly shogeg. So that's really what's going on here. Okay, with that, I want to get started. We're going to start with the very last word of Kuf Bet Amud Bet, Tashma. We were in the middle of this argument between Shmuel and Rav about the different kinds of buildings and whether you're obligated because you built, or according to Shmuel, you're obligated because you're a makebet patish. And we talked about misatet, chiseling stones. We talked about the lul shel tarnagolim, where you open up a part in the chicken coop to have some air circulation going. I see. I forgot to put in the sheet. Somebody put it in. Okay, great. Excellent. Thank you. So what we have here is hakodech tashma, hakodech kol shu chayav. It said in our Mishnah, if you drill any sort of amount, you're going to be obligated. So according to Rav, this makes sense because what do you do when you drill a hole? Well, you drill a hole. Now, that's part of the building process. Any builder knows, right? You drill and then you put something inside. But now they say, if Shmuel says that these things are all forbidden because of makebet patish, that means striking the final blow. Now, is drilling striking the final blow? No. You drill, and then after you put something in the hole. So the Shmuel, lav gemar malachahu. That's not the final blow. So the Gemara answers, hacha b'ma'askinan debaze beramtza deparzela v'shavke begave. Dahainu gemar malacha. What we're talking about is when you drill, there's two different ways to drill. You could just drill a hole and then after put what you want inside. Or you can drill the hole with the nail or the screw that you plan to put inside. So if you do it with the ramza, that's the nail or the screw, de parzelav, barzel of iron, v'shavke begabein, you leave it inside. Then that's Gemar Malacha. At the same time that you're doing the drilling, you're actually finishing the act. Back to the Mishnah, Zehaklal. So the line in the Mishnah, I kind of read it quickly, and now we're going to explain it. Zehaklal, the third line of the Mishnah on Kuf Bet Amud Bet, Kol haoseh malacha u'malachto mitchayemet b'Shabbat chayav. If you do malacha, and that is established on Shabbat, meaning it lasts, or we'll have to see exactly what this is, then you're obligated. So Zehaklal latu yemai. Now Zehaklal always comes to include something that we wouldn't have known otherwise, because if it just comes to review what it says in the Mishnah, the Gemara's, it could be that's what the Mishnah is coming to do, but the Gemara's attitude is it must be coming to add something extra. Latuye dechak kapiza bekava. Okay, what does this mean? There's a bunch of different explanations of what a kapiza is. Kav is a measurement of a kav. It's 4 log. There's a debate whether Rashi says a kapiza is 3 log. Some people say it's half a log, which would be 2 log. Half a kav, which would be 2 log. So either it's 3/4 of a log, half a log. It doesn't really make a difference. The idea here is that you took, again, there's different explanations. I'll go with Rashi. He says, let's say you took a mold, you put it into you had a utensil, and you want to shape it. Ultimately, you're going to shape it into the size of a kav, and you're going to have a tool that, I guess it's either to create a measuring implement or just something that could hold a kav of liquid. So now you kind of make that thing, but instead of making it with your mold to the full size of a kav, you make it to a kapiza, which is either half or 3/4. And then over time, you're going to actually make it deeper. But at this point, you only made it that deep. So now comes the Mishnah to say, well, that's a pe'ula shemitkayemet b'Shabbat. Since right now it's usable as it is, even though you're going to ultimately change it and make it a deeper utensil, at this point, you made it only that amount. That's still a malacha shemitkayemet, and you're going to be obligated. Next line in the Mishnah, Rashbag Omer, af hamakeh b'kornus ala sadan. If you take a sledgehammer and you bang on the anvil, right? That's the surface that you're working on. Right? I think in my mind, because it's easier for me to envision, an iron with an ironing board, right? So you have an ironing board, and instead of ironing on the item, you're ironing on the board. That's kind of like what you're doing here. So Gemara says, my ka'avid, you didn't really do anything. If I just iron the iron board, so I'm not doing anything, the ironing board doesn't need ironing, just like the sadan, the anvil, doesn't need fixing in any way. So what am I doing there that I'd be obligated? He's practicing. Okay, you're getting ready for doing the real thing. That's already in and of itself. I was thinking, what came into my mind was a batter gets up to bat in baseball, and he swings his bat. There's no ball coming his way, but he's kind of getting ready. Okay, so that would be the same thing. You're actually doing an action, even though you don't have the ball there, you don't have the utensil that you're going to shape, but you're practicing. So the Gemara, B'nai Rechava have some issues with this. Kashuba B'nai Rechava elame'ata chaza umanta b'Shabbat b'Shabta b'gamar hachinami d'mechayev. If you're going to say that practicing is forbidden, or learning, so let's say I go to a carpenter's shop on Shabbat, and I watch, even through the window, let's say, I don't even go inside, and I watch how he does his work, and I learn. Is that forbidden on Shabbat? Is it usher for me to do that? Obviously not. I didn't do anything. So therefore, if I'm also, theoretically, by banging my sledgehammer on the anvil, I'm also not doing anything. So why would we say that I'm obligated for not doing anything? I'm really not doing anything. Now, one could definitely distinguish and say, wait, there's a difference between watching and not doing anything versus doing some sort of action, even though the action doesn't really do anything. But their view is if the action doesn't do anything, it's no different than watching and learning. And nobody would say that, so how could you say this? And now there's going to be 2 explanations of this answer that Abaye and Rava give. El Abaye v'Rava da'amrei travayu, shekain meradidei tasei mishkan osim ken. In fact, in the time of the Mishkan, they did this also. When they made these gold plates, they would bang on them with the sledgehammer, but they would also bang on the anvil while they were doing this. Now, one could say that they were doing this to practice, and since Doesn't matter that it was just to practice, and you're not going to learn from there that if I just watch someone, because that's not what they did in the Mishkan. In the Mishkan, what they did was they practiced in this way, and therefore it's forbidden. It's not what Rashi says. Rashi gives a different explanation. He says, what do they do? So if you look at Rashi Osimkin, and there's something very nice at the end of this Rashi that I wanted to point out, and it connects to something I said either yesterday or the day before. Makin shalosh alatas ve'achar ala sadan. The way they would do it in the Mishkan, Rashi says, is they would bang 3 times on the utensil, on what they were building, and every 4th blow, they would bang on the anvil. Why? Not for practice, okay? And with this way, Rav and Abai explain it differently than Rav and Rav Yosef. Lahachlik hakornus. They want to smooth out the corners. Every 3 blows, you have to smooth it out again because maybe it gets out of shape a little bit. Shelo yibaka tas. The tas was very fragile, and you might ruin it. Shudak, because it's very thin, and therefore, every 3 blows, you have to smooth out the corners. How does he know this? Here he tells you, he doesn't usually tell you this, he says when you look at the people who live in my neighborhood, I've gone to look, and I see that this is exactly what they do. So now this is very nice because Rashi finds reality, finds people doing this in his neighborhood. What's interesting about it, though, is exactly what I said the other day, which is that people are influenced by what they see around them. And what Rashi saw people doing around caused him, it's not necessarily the other way around. It's very nice to say, we found proof for what the Gemara says in his reality, or it could be the exact reverse. He found the explanation for the Gemara in what he saw happening around. Doesn't mean that his pshat is right. It's just that he took what he sees people doing and he says, the fact that people are doing it now must mean that people were doing it then, and that's his proof. Now, it could be 100% right, or it could be he's using his reality to understand the text. And as I said, there are others, I didn't bring you them inside, who explain the text otherwise, who don't think that that's the intention. And here, really, they were just practicing, but because they did that in the Mishkan, therefore, it's also forbidden. And that would be different from people just watching somebody do something, which, now, go prove that wasn't done in the Mishkan either. It could be people were watching other people. But again, I don't think anyone would really think, and maybe then, according to them, the answer is that there's a difference between doing an action versus just looking, and that would be a difference. Tanya Nami Haki. Here's a bright to support Abai and Rava. Rashbag Omer. This is the same Rashbag in our Mishnah, but in the Braita, it comes with a little bit more explanation, and it says, because this is what they did in the Mishkan, and that supports Abai and Rava. Again, though, both interpretations of Abai and Rava are still open. New Mishnah. We're moving now to HaChoresh. You would have thought that they would have started with Choresh. It's interesting they start with Boneh and not Choresh, right? Because the first Malacha is Choresh in the list. So I don't know why they started with Boneh, but anyway, it's a good question. HaChoresh Kolshehu. So if you plow any small amount, just like Boneh, we said any small amount. HaMinakesh, if you weed. HaMikarsem, if you cut off dry leaves. HaMizared, if you cut off wet branches. Kolshehu chayav. By the way, mikarsem could be cutting off branches also. I just said leaves, but it could be cutting off any dry, anything on the tree. Mizared is cutting off liquid, moist ones. If you do that, kolshehu, any measurement, you're going to be chayav. We're going to have to say why any. Why is that a significant amount? Hamilaket eitzim, if you're gathering wood. Im litaken kolshehin. Im lehesek kedei lavashel beitzah kala. It depends why you're doing it. If it's to fix the ground, you're gathering them because you want to fix the ground underneath, then you're obligated any amount, because charisha, we just said, is any amount. Im lehesek, if you're using them for firewood, then it's kedei lavashel beitzah kala. Now we're going to go back to all our definitions that we saw when it came to carrying. How much wood? The amount of wood that you would take to cook a small egg. Hamilaket asavim, if you gather grass, im, again, it's attached to the ground. Im litaken, then it's choresh, then it's plowing, and then kolshehu. Im lebehema, if you're gathering it to feed an animal, then it goes back again to the measurements we saw by carrying, kimalo pi hagdi, the amount that a goat would eat. Okay. Before we go on, I'm just going to mention to you, there's a lot of debates about what it doesn't tell you in this Mishnah. The Mishnah is telling you what you're obligated, how much of what you did are you obligated for. If you do a little bit, if you do, depending on what you're doing. But it doesn't tell you what malacha here. So I'm going to give you a bunch of debates about a bunch of these things. So minakesh, weeding. The Rambam says it's because of harisha, plowing. The Ran says it's because it depends why you're doing it. If you're doing it to make the ground better, then it's choresh. But if you're doing it to make whatever it's growing grow better, then it's zorea, then it's planting. Mikarsem, again, if you cut them, so now it could be two possible things. Why do you cut the dry twigs? Because you want it to grow better. That would be zorea. If you're cutting it in order because you want to cut, then it's kotzer, right? That's a different malacha of cutting. So it seems, one second, mikarsem, or, right, so there the Rambam says, if you're planning to use what you cut, then it's kotzer. And if not, then you're fixing what's growing, and then it's zorea, then it's planting. Other people say, no, it's just zorea, milaket. Okay, so let's say you're gathering. So now, what's milaket? Again, if you're doing it, if you're gathering it to fix the ground, we said that's choresh. But if it's to fix what's growing, then it's zorea. And what if you're gathering it for firewood? So what's the malacha there? Okay, it's not later you're going to burn it on fire. That's that. But what about the gathering process? What's that forbidden because of? So Rashi says kotzel, and the Rambam says me'amel, making a pile, because you're gathering it together. So there's a big debate about all these things, about which malacha they fall into. And as we know, it's very important, because if you do one malacha with a number of different actions, the question is how many sin offerings you're going to have to bring. So it's very important to know what malacha it falls under. And as we see, there's a lot of different opinions. So the Gemara starts off and says, Lamai chazeh. If you plow a very small amount, what is this relevant for? So the Gemara says, lebizra dekara. Okay, what if you plant a seed of pumpkin? A seed of a pumpkin is big, right? One pumpkin seed grows a big pumpkin. So that's already something of significance. Dekavatega be mishkan. We see that by the Mishkan. Sheken ra'oi lekelech echad shel sammanim. When they made the dye, sometimes you could just take it from one stalk. You could get a whole bunch of dye out of it. So therefore, you can see that even planting a small amount, one seed could already, right, even plowing a very small amount could be significant for something. Now we're going to bring a braita that goes more in detail. Tanu Rabbanan. Hatolesh olshin, if you weed out endives. Okay, now weeding out endives has two processes. Again, you can use the endive and you're weeding them out. V'hamazared zradim, and if you weed out reeds or you cut dry reeds. Moist ones. If you want to use for food purposes, again, it all depends what your intent is. If you plan to eat it, ki grogeret. Well, if a person's going to eat it, let's say you want to eat the endives, that's a grogeret. Again, I told you we're going to go back to all the shiurim. This is good review. When it came to carrying, any food item that a person would eat would be a grogeret, the size of a fig. Im lebehema, if for an animal, kimalo piagdi. If you were doing it for food for animals, then it's the mouthful of a goat. Im lehesek, if it's for burning, kedei levashel beitzah kala. Im liapotet hakarka, but if you want to do it to make the ground better, and that's why you're weeding them out, well then what's the shiur for weeding? We already said, kol shehen, any amount. So now comes a big, these next few lines are very, very central to all of Masechet Shabbat, not all, but many things we've learned in Masechet Shabbat, all about, it's going to go back to this famous machloket, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, about davar she'eino mitkaven. If you don't intend to do something, right, this is clearly all about your intent. If you intend it for this or you intend it for that, right, that's going to affect whether you're obligated or not. Again, Rabbi Shimon, let's just review. Rabbi Yehuda says, if it's davar she'eino mitkaven, you didn't intend to do something, right, you weeded the endives, not to weed, but because you wanted to eat them. So what would Rabbi Yehuda say? It's patur val asur. It's usher from the rabbis, but by Torah law, it's not forbidden. According to Rabbi Shimon, you're allowed to do this. It's considered as if it's nothing. Now, if we hold like Rabbi Shimon, then basically we're going to say here, and that's what the Gemara says, and we do hold like Rabbi Shimon. So he says, Atu kulu lo liapotet hakarkaninu? But wait a minute. Aren't all these actions, don't they also, it could be you want to eat it, but in the end, they're also making the land better. So you should be obligated, kol shehu. It shouldn't have each one have its own individual, because the fact is you're making the ground better by weeding them out. Rav Yosef ta'amakei travayu. So they both answer. The first answer is ba'agam shanu. It must be that we're talking in a swamp area or where there's a lot of water. And Rashi explains that when there's a lot of water, It's unclear exactly, but he says, she'ein tzarich liyapot. You don't need to weed things out in the where there's this swamp. It's not needed. Okay, so therefore it's not necessary, in which case it doesn't really do anything. So therefore, that's why the shiur is not a kol shehu, but it's what we said, it depends on what you're using it for. Abaye amar, afilu tema basadeh. Abaye says, why are you assuming this brighter? That's already a rare ukimta to say we're only talking about an agam, but you could say this is in a field. And how so? Delav basadeh delav agam, and it's not an agam. Ukigon delo kamachaven. Very simply, this is what we said. You didn't intend. You're not intending to weed. And if you're not intending to weed, then it doesn't matter that the weeding's happening. And therefore, we're going to go by what your intention is. Rabbi Shimon, classic. But what's the problem? But those two, Abaye and Rava both said, this is Abaye speaking, they both said, Modeh Rabbi Shimon b'psik reisha v'lo yamut. They say, wait a minute. Psik reisha, remember what a psik reisha is? If we cut off, pasik reisha, you cut off the head of a chicken, the chicken's not going to die? Of course it's going to die. You can't cut off the chicken and the chicken's not going to die. This is a necessary result of your action. And Rabbi Shimon says that if it's definitely going to happen, then you're obligated. So, what do we answer? And this is a huge, huge sentence, okay? One line that created a huge uproar. Lo tzricha de ka'avi ba'ara de chavri. The first thing that's interesting about this is, what does he say? It must be that you did this in your friend's field. And if you did it in your friend's field, then it's no longer what we call a psik reisha. Well, it is a psik reisha, but it's not exactly, and we're going to have to explain what this is. And there's a big machloket. Okay, the Gefet that's coming out today of Chana Dreyfus, she has a whole shiur on this. You can find it on our site. It's fascinating. She goes through this Tosfot, which basically discusses the machloket of the Aruch and Tosfot about this whole concept of psik reisha, what we call, the Aruch calls this delon nichale. This is what we call a psik reisha. That's not noach for him. It's not in my best interest. It's not in my interest at all. It's not something I'd benefit from. According to the Aruch was the first dictionary. Okay, it's a dictionary, but it's more than just a dictionary. There's a lot of explanations there. It was in the beginning of the time of the Rishonim, so very early source. And the first line in Tosfot says, "Lo tzricha davi ba'aret chavre perish ba'aruch de b'psik reisha de lo nichale." Like, for example, if you did it in the field of your friend. That's something I don't benefit from the weeding at all. So because I don't benefit from the weeding, and he goes even so far as to say, and this is another, just an interesting aside. Rashi says, what does it mean, your friend? Lo echpat le liyapot. Because it's someone else's, you don't really care, which is interesting in terms of our perception of, we should care about other people. So if I'm doing something good for you, theoretically, I should care. Rashi says, no, that's not really considered caring. Okay, that's not. The Aruch says, ukigom go back to the Tosfot, the next line, ukigom ba'acher she'eno ohavo. It must be someone you really don't like. Now, what you're doing picking in his field, I don't know. If you really don't like this person, I don't know why you're picking in his field. But he says it has to be someone. It's not just someone. He would say, well, if someone who's your friend, well, then you're actually benefiting because you're doing something nice for your friend, and that's good for you. And maybe you could say tit for tat, or just in an altruistic kind of way. It's nice for you. But if it's someone you really don't like, and you're doing something good for them, that's lo nichale. In any case, there's a big debate, and I'll just mention it really briefly, and I recommend you listening, if your Hebrew's good, to Hannah's shiur. She basically discusses the difference between Tosfot and the Aruch. The Aruch basically says, in order for something to be obligated for Rabbi Shimon, if it's a psik reisha, has to have two criteria. Number one, definitely going to happen. Number two, you have to want it to happen. And if you don't want it to happen, like you're doing it for someone you don't like, then it's not. It's a davar she'eino. It goes back to being a davar she'eino mitkaven, and you're exempt. Tosfot doesn't like this, and they bring different proof texts. I'm not going to go through all the proofs. She goes through it very well. Tosfot says this isn't all. We kind of exit the elm of davar she'eino mitkaven when we say ba'ara dechavre, and we're going to say this isn't a davar she'eino mitkaven psik reisha. It falls into the category, once you do it for someone else, of a melacha she'ena tzricha legufa. And if you remember, there Rabbi Shimon says patur. He doesn't say mutal. He says patur. And that according to Tosfot, the Gemara is saying that you're not obligated on a d'oraita level, but you are obligated on a d'Rabbanan level. And we're not talking about the realm of if it's davar she'eino mitkaven and it's allowed entirely. It's talking about a malacha she'ena tzricha legufa. And because according to Tosfot, once you know, because according to Tosfot, it works like this. There's no issue. What we always talk about, or I don't know if you've heard this before, but psikresha de lo nichale is allowed. According to Tosfot, there's no such exemption. There's no such thing as de lo nichale. If it's going to happen, then you're obligated, no matter what. It doesn't matter whether it's good for you or not good for you. So what he says is going on here is it's a different category. It's and it's not actually permitted. It's just not forbidden on a Torah level. So he has a whole different reading of the sugya, and it's a very basic difference because it really affects if you're going to do something. Okay, what's the classic? I'll give you a classic case of davar she'eino mitkaven denichale. You wash your, right, this, we always go back to this. You wash your hands, you do netilat yadayim on the grass, right? You're in your sukkah and you want to wash outside your sukkah. So you go outside and you wash over the grass. Now that's nichale, right? But let's say you would do it on the street and you don't really care about the street. I don't know, maybe you could call that lo nichale or something like that, right? So there's a difference about, it's a very, if you say the psikresha de lo nichale is allowed, like the Aruch says, that's a huge difference than saying like Tosfot that there is no such exemption for that. Okay, and he would say no matter what, if it's definitely going to happen, you're obligated. Okay, she discusses some other nafkamino between them, again, recommended if you have time. And if your Hebrew's good. Okay, moving on. So that's a real, this is the central, before we kept mentioning it, but here's the real central sugya on psikresha and nichale and lo nichale. It really comes out from here. New Mishnah. And this is, again, this is just the way the Gemara works. The way the Gemara works is they have cases, and then they try to build, the Rishonim take these different cases and try to build theories based on the cases. And different people view these in different ways. So Tosfot viewed it one way, the Aruch viewed it a different way, and came to different conclusions about how they viewed the case. So therefore, because the Gemara always gives things in examples, and less so in klalim, even though we do sometimes have zeh klal, but generally they don't talk about principles, they talk about cases, and each one brings proof cases, how they can prove from other cases what it is. New Mishnah, we're moving now to Kotev. Okay, two interesting things before I move on, just also some extra material on the website. Shuli Mishkin is going to start a weekly column now on Hadran's site, and she, with a historical bent, so she talks about the history of letters. So it's a worthwhile read. It has to do a lot with what's on the daf, and the history of really the alphabet, the Hebrew alphabet. And the blog of Daf Michelle in Hebrew also talks about the issue of specifically, let's say, writing WhatsApps on Shabbat or writing on a computer. Is that considered writing? Is that considered davar shemitkayem, or is it a no mitkayem? And they have a good argument there about claiming maybe it is davar shemitkayem, or no, it's just something that lives virtually and it's not davar shemitkayem. So there, one of the proofs they said about it saying it's mitkayem, it does last, is think about if sometimes you delete something and then you can still find the old version, right? And if you have some sort of backup, right, that's more mitkayem even than if you erase something on a piece of paper that you won't even have anymore. So there's a debate there about how to view writing on computers or writing on phones, and it's an interesting, and they try to bring halachic proofs to the different sides. The Mishnah starts out, Hakotev shtei otiot, bein b'yamino, bein b'smalo, bein mishem echad, bein mishnei shemot. Okay, let's start explaining. If you write two letters, that's the requisite amount for writing. Whether you write with your right hand or your left hand. Whether you write mishem echad or mishnei shemot, what they assume this means is one letter or two letters. So let's say you write the word ba, bet aleph, so that would be one word, right? Well, two letters, sorry, that's mishnei shemot. Even if you write gag, which is roof, that's two letters, you write two gimels, you're also going to be obligated. Bein mishtei samaniot. Okay, this is a debate whether it's talking about two different symbols or two different types of ink. Okay, this is where, in the computer, we see this all the time where I use this on my sheets, different colored fonts, right? Or different colors and different fonts. So even if you do different colors, one is one color, one is another color, you're still going to be obligated. B'chol lashon, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be Hebrew. It could be any language that you write, you're going to be obligated. Amar Rabbi Yossi. Lo chivu shtei otiot. We're going to have three different opinions here, although we're going to see maybe they're not exactly three different opinions, but three different lines here. The first was this first one with all these things that we just said. The second one is Rabbi Yossi, who says, Lo chivu shtei otiot ela mishum roshem, shekain kotvim al karshem mishkan ladat eze ben zugo. This is something interesting you probably didn't know about the karshim and the mishkan. When they carried the beams in the mishkan from place to place, apparently they put markings on them to know which ones went with each other, because when they rebuilt it, they apparently rebuilt it. This is what I read again, and maybe there's different explanations, but they apparently rebuilt it in the same formation it was before. So if your beam was on this side, in this place, that's where it was going to be next time. So they would put markings on it so they would know which one goes where. Therefore, he comes and says it doesn't even have to be, writing could be a notation. It doesn't have to be a letter. Okay, he seems to disagree with the Tanakama. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, third opinion, Matzinu shem katan mishem gadol. Shem mishimon mishmuel, Noach minacho, Dan midaniel, Gad migadiel. You could theoretically be writing a whole word, but if you stop in the middle and what you wrote is a word, then you could be obligated. We saw this before, and we'll see it again where we saw it in the source in the 7th parak, that if you write, and we actually saw it also even recently, more recently than that, if you write the word shem, the letters shin, mem, which are the first 3 letters, you meant to write Shimon, but it came out shin, mem, you're obligated because you've already written a whole word. Okay, so there you're obligated, which would seem to imply what? It would seem to imply that if you wrote, if you wrote shin, Gimel, or I don't know, you were writing some word and it came out to 2 mumbo-jumbo words that didn't mean anything, you wouldn't be obligated. It would have to be a word. And the other thing they're going to infer from here, I'll already tell you this, even though you might not have thought about it, but notice all the examples he brings are 2 letters that are different from each other. And he doesn't bring, let's say, the word Gog. Let's say Gog mi Gagon. Okay, so you could have brought that word, and the fact that he didn't bring that word seems to prove that he doesn't think you'd be obligated if it were the same letter. And then they're going to bring a contradictory source where he does say you're obligated if it's the same letter, and they're going to try to resolve that difficulty. But the first thing the Gemara gets off on other side issues, I understand why you're obligated if you write with your right hand, because that's the way we write. But this proves to you, by the way, that if you do something with your left hand, or if you're maybe the reverse, if you're a lefty and you do it with your right hand, that would be called a shinoi, kila achar yad. It's already not in the typical manner. So they're asking, why would you be obligated, ben b'yamin, ben b'smol? People write with usually only one hand. So what do they answer? There are going to be 3 different answers. The first answer is, Amar b'yirmiyah ba'itar yad shanu. The left was talking about a left-handed person. That must be what it means. So if you're a righty, your right hand, lefty, left hand. But they say, it sounds like, really, it doesn't sound like that's what it's saying. It sounds like it's saying you're obligated for writing with your right hand or with your left hand, and it makes it sound like if you're a lefty, you'd be obligated right or left, and therefore they say, Tehave, smol didei kimin de kulei alma, va smol lichayev, ayamin lo lichayev. If you're going to say righty, right hand, lefty, left hand, then a left-handed person who writes with their right hand isn't going to be obligated, and that seems to them so bizarre. I'm not sure why, but they think that that can't possibly be what they're talking about. And maybe because they read, bain b'yamin, bain b'smol, it sounds like you're going to be obligated either which way, if you write with either hand. And therefore, they say, El Amar Abaye, second answer, Bisholek b'shtei adav. Someone ambidextrous, the Mishnah is referring to, who can write with both hands and therefore right and left. Third answer, Rav Yaakov Barei de Bat Yaakov Amar. By the way, his name is interesting. He's Rav Yaakov, the son of the daughter of Yaakov. Notice he goes by his mother and not by his father. Okay, which is interesting, people say, because his father wasn't a very reputable person. And because of that, he's named for his mother. So he says, Hamane Rabbi Yossi. This line about right or left goes by Rabbi Yossi's approach. Damar lo chivu shtei otiot ela mishum roshem. Rabbi Yossi says it's just notations. Now, I can make a notation. I happen to be lefty. I can make a notation with my right hand, and it'll be totally fine. So it must be talking about, it must be according to Rabbi Yossi, it doesn't matter right or left, because we're not talking about writing something so particular like letters. But what's the problem with saying that's Rabbi Yossi? Because we already said there's 3 lines of the Mishnah. The first line is the one about the right and left-handed. The second line is Rabbi Yossi. And the third line is Rabbi Yehuda, which sounds like there's 3 different opinions. So Hami de Sefer Rabbi Yossi, which really means the middle, since the next line is Rabbi Yossi, Reish Alav Rabbi Yossi. So how could you say this is Rabbi Yossi's opinion? The Gemara answers, well, actually, Kula Rabbi Yossi. It's actually both the first line and the second line are both Rabbi Yossi. It just brings in Rabbi Yossi in the middle, but really the whole thing is Rabbi Yossi. Obviously, it begs the question, why didn't it say from the beginning it was Rabbi Yossi? So we have 3 answers, either a left-handed person, ambidextrous person, or the whole thing is Rabbi Yossi, and it really doesn't matter how well you write, because we're not talking about letters. It's interesting that they relate to this whole righty-lefty thing. It comes up a lot in the Gemara because of doing things with your right hand in general, and other such stuff like Kohanim, they're supposed to do things with their right. What if they're lefties? comes up with tefillin, all sorts of issues. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Now we're back to Rabbi Yehuda, and this is the contradiction I mentioned earlier. Ela Rabbi Yehuda shtei otiyot behem shnei shemot hu demechayev. Because he says specifically Shem Shimon, Gad mi Gadiel, etc., sounds like shtei otiyot, two different otiyot. But shtei otiyot behem shem echad lo mechayev. If they're two otiyot, he writes two letters, but they happen to be the same letter, sounds like he wouldn't obligate. Now, Hatanya, and that contradicts his opinion in this Braita. Now, again, I'm going to just tell you where we're going, because so you don't get lost. We're bringing a very long Braita with 4 different opinions. The one that's important for our purposes right now is Rabbi Yehuda. But once we deal with Rabbi Yehuda, we're going to bring the entire Braita, then get back to the contradiction. Then once we do that, we're going to get off on some issues about the Braita itself, about some other opinions mentioned in this Braita. Amar Rabbi V'hatanya v'asa achat. Now we're going back to this verse that we darshaned a while ago about Daber al bnei Israel, speak to the Jewish people. This is in Vayikra Perek Daled Pasuk Bet. Lemor nefesh ki techta b'shgagat. It's our classic pasuk about a korban chatat, when you bring a sin offering. If you do a sin unwittingly, mikol mitzvot Hashem asher lo te'asena. We darshaned that a bunch of times. Ve'asa me'achat mehena. Remember, we said this is a very strange wording. From one, from those. So we're going to have to explain what this means, and we're going to have some different explanations. Ve'asa achat. Yachol ad shichtov kol Hashem. It says, and you do one of these things. One sounds like a whole. So maybe you're only going to be obligated unless you write, only if you write the entire name. Or ad shiarog, when it comes to other melachot, until you weave kol habeged, the entire cloth. Oh, ad shiasek kol hanafa, until you create the sieve, right? Where you do under over, and you weave the entire sieve. So Talmud Lamav Mechat, because of that, it says from one, which means you're not obligated only when you do something whole, even if you do a part of something. So now the Gemara says, wait a minute though. Imechat, Yechol afilu, if you're going to say from one, it could be any part of one. So then what might you think? Afilu lo katav ala ot echad, maybe even one letter. Oh, when we know that's not the case, you have to write 2 letters. Oh, lo harag ela chut echad, maybe you only wove 1 string. V'lo asa ela bayit echad b'nafal, you only did 1 small section of the sieve. Talmud loma achat. Therefore, it says 1, which means whole. So now we have on the one hand part, on the other hand whole. Haketzad, how do we work this out? Eino chayav ad sheyachtov shem katan mishem gadol. What does this mean? According to Tanakama, and this matches Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah, it has to be a small name from a big name, meaning it has to be a whole entity, but a whole entity that could be part of a bigger entity. So like Shem Mishimon, Umishmuel, or Noach Minachol, or Dan mi Daniel, or Gad mi Gadiel. Again, that means you were writing the whole name, but you stopped in the middle, but you already wrote something that's a whole word that's 2 letters. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, which by the way matches Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah, which is strange because this is Tanakama, and comes to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Afilu lo katav ala shtei otiyot vehem shem echad. You could just write 2 letters as long as they're, even if they're from the same letter. Shem echad is same letter. Kigon, you're going to be chayav. Kigon, shesh, tet, ral, gag, chach. These are 2-letter words that have the same letter. So here, there's the contradiction. Because Rabbi Yehuda previously said that, Rabbi Yehuda previously in our Mishnah said that it has to be Shem Mishimon. Again, he didn't say specifically, but because the examples he gave were the same were different letters, it's implied that it wouldn't work if it were the same letters, you wouldn't be obligated. Here he says very clearly that if it's the same letter, you're still obligated. Again, like I said, we're continuing in the Braita. We're going to get back to his contradiction when we finish the Braita. Amar Rabbi Yossi, v'chi mishum kotev hu chayav, v'lo einu chayav ela mishum roshem. What are you talking about? It's not writing. It's writing any kind of symbol, marking. Shekain roshmim al kashem mishkan legai ezo hi ben zugo. Because in the Mishkan, they would make a marking on each of the beams to know who its match was. Lefichach. Therefore, and here he's basically saying what we saw in the Mishnah, but he's explaining a little better. Sarat tzrita achat al shnei nesarim. If you just make an indentation, a scratch on one on 2 boards, you do it twice. Oh, shtei tzritot al neser echad. It doesn't matter if it's 2 etchings on 1 board or 1 on 2 boards. Chayav. 4th opinion, Rabbi Shimon Omer va'asa achat. Yachol ad shichtov et kol Hashem. Again, he's darshaning this achat and me'achat. So it says, by the way, this is going to sound very much like the first opinion, and the Gemara is going to ask, why is this different? Because you're going to see here, it sounds almost exactly the same. So it sounds like echat, you have to do something whole. Ad shichtov et kol Hashem, the whole word. Ad shiarog kol habeged, ad shiaseh et kol hanafat. Talmud lomar me'echat. Therefore, it says from one, meaning it doesn't have to be whole. Im echat, if it says from, yachol afilu lo katav al ot echat, afilu lo harag al achut echat, afilu lo asa al bayit echat benafat. Exactly the same question Tanna Kama asked. Talmud lomar, that's why I'm not re-explaining because we already saw this. Talmud lomar achat. So again, haketzad, how does this work? It has to be whole, it could be part. How do we work that out? Here he says something a little bit different, but it's not clear what he means differently. Eino chayav ad shiaseh melacha shekayotze ba mitkayemet. You're only obligated when you do something that could exist on its own, maybe, which sounds like Shem Shimon. It sounds exactly the same as Tanna Kama. So we're going to have to see after what the difference is. Now we have fifth opinion, but it's not really a fifth opinion. Those were 4 different opinions about writing. When you're obligated for writing, again, Tanna Kama, Shem Shimon. The second opinion, Rabbi Yehuda, even if it's the same letter. Third opinion, Rabbi Yossi, even if it's just an indentation, right, a marking. Fourth opinion really sounded like the first opinion, so we'll have to see what the difference is. Now comes Rabbi Yossi, and he wants to darshan the achat mehena in a different way, and this is something we saw before. I'm going to hold off on this. The Gemara is going to explain it in a few lines. Now back to our contradiction. So how do we reconcile this? It sounded like Shem Shimon in the Mishnah. Here it sounds like 2 of the same letters. Lo kashya hadideh hadirabeh. In one case, he was talking about his own opinion. In one case, he was quoting his rabbi. Therefore, there's no contradiction because it wasn't really Rabbi Yehuda the whole time. Titania, how do we know this? Rabbi Yehuda Omer Mishum Rabban Gamliel, afilu lo katav al shtei otiot behem shem echad kegon shesh tet ra gag chach. There you see, he said it in the name of Rabban Gamliel. So the Braita, which quoted him saying that, was really Rabban Gamliel's opinion and not his own. Now we're going back, as I said, to the questions about the Braita. For Rabbi Shimon, Hainu Tanna Kama, sounds like they're saying the exact same thing. The chitema aleph aleph da azrecha ikabenayu. Maybe the word al. If you start writing the word azrecha, it's a pasuk in the. I didn't look up where it is. It's in Yeshayahu. If you start writing aleph aleph of that pasuk, by the way, all the writing they're assuming has to do with writing in a Sefer Torah. We're going to get to that at the end of today. So let's say you start writing aleph aleph of azrecha. Maybe that ikabenayu. Maybe that would be a difference the halacha. The Tanna Kama savar aleph aleph da'azreka lo machayev, because what does Tanna Kama say? Has to be Shem Mishimon, right? And that's enough. Rabbi Shimon, who also said Shem Mishimon, why would he think you'd be obligated? Rabbi Shimon savar kevan de'ite begaltore ba'alma chayav. He says something very interesting. Aleph aleph is something you might find in a kameh, okay, in an amulet. And because, what did he say? His wording was davar hamitzkayem, something that is usable for something, even if it's not a real word, but it's something they might use in an amulet. We talked about how in the amulets they would write all sorts of weird things. Therefore, you might have thought you'd be in as ba'alma chayav. He would think that you're chayav. Okay? So he would say, he would be more machmir. Well, the Gemara doesn't like this. Rabbi Shimon l'chumra. Rabbi Shimon's always our kula guy, remember? Except for that one case we saw, he's always being more lenient here. And not only that, but in something very similar, he's lenient. V'hatanya hakodech kol shu chayav. Hamegarer kol shu chayav. Hamabed kol shu. Hatzar b'kli tzura kol shu. All these cases, Rabbi Shimon Omer, ad shiftach et kulo, ad shigor et kulo, ad shiabed et kulo, ad shiatzor kulo. In all these cases of drilling, scraping, tanning the leather, drawing something on a utensil, all these things, according to Tanna Kama, any amount you do, you're obligated. According to Rabbi Shimon, it has to be something you do it entirely. So what do you see here? Rabbi Shimon is lenient here. You're not obligated unless you do it in its entirety. So we're certainly not going to be more machmir by writing and say aleph aleph is a problem, whereas Tanna Kama says it's not. That makes no sense. Ella, so therefore, second option of Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon ha'atal ashwina. Ad shichtov et Hashem kulo. He thinks you have to write the entire word. Umi matzid amar hachi. Could you really say this? V'hatanya Rabbi Shimon omer ba'asa achat yachol ad shichtov et Hashem kulo. Talmud lomar me'achat. Sounds like no, you only have to write part of the word. I actually said it wrong before. He doesn't actually say Shem Mishimon. Okay? So therefore, they say maybe it means you have to actually write the whole word. You have to write Shimon. Okay? However, Rabbi Shimon himself said, you might have thought you have to write the whole word. And then we said, but it says me'achat, you don't. So how can we possibly say that? Teretz ve'emahachi. So explain like this. Very interestingly, they say that Rabbi Shimon says you don't have to write the whole verse, but you have to actually write a whole word to be obligated. If you write just 2 letters of a word, you won't be obligated according to Rabbi Shimon. And when he said he didn't mean the whole word, he meant the whole sentence. By the way, this word shame sometimes means letters, sometimes means words. Here it could mean a whole verse. Now the last part of the Braita, me'achat. Rabbi Yossi omer v'asachat v'hena pamim shechayav achat al kulam, pamim shechayav al kol achat v'achat. So now we're going to see his drasha in its entirety, which we already learned. Amar Rabbi Yossi v'Rabbi Chanina, my time de Rabbi Yossi, achat mehena, hena mehena, achat shehena. Okay, so we have achat me'achat, hena mehena. We have 4 things really. So what does he say? Achat shehena, v'hena sheachat. What's that? Achat Shimon me'achat Shem Mishimon, right? Achat means you have to write the whole Shimon. Me'achat says even if you just write Shem Mishimon. That's the first drasha. The second is Hena mehena. Hena is avot. Mehena, there's things that come out of it, outgrowths, that's the toladot. Echad shehena, what's echad shehena and hena sheachat? Zadon Shabbat b'shigigat malachot. You could have one act, which is many, right? You could have to bring one sin offering on, right? If you're Zadon Shabbat and Shigigat Malachot, you forgot that the Malachot are Aser. You could do one thing, but obligated for many Malachot. Now that you forgot one thing, which is you forgot Malachot, but you could be obligated for each one that you forgot. Heina Shiachat, which is if you forgot Shabbat and Zadon Malachot, then you'll only have to bring one sin offering. Okay, quickly, last part for today. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Matzinu Shem Katan Mishem Gadol. Mi damin mem deshem satum, mem deshimon patuach. If you write Shem Shimon in the Hebrew alphabet, there's a mem in Shimon is a regular mem. And in the word Shem, it's a mem sofit. It sounds like, again, if you assume that we're talking about writing in a Sefer Torah and you wrote Shem Shimon, I mean, obviously you're writing the wrong word, but as soon as you write Shem mem, since Shem mem is a word, you're already obligated on Shabbat. But the mem should be a mem sofit, it's the wrong mem. So what does he say here? He says it sounds like if you did it wrong, it would be kasher. If you write a mem sofit as a regular mem, sounds like it would be okay. And Meitive, there's a contradiction against this, right? So it says in a Braita against Rav Chisda, Uchtavtam, shektei ktivat tam, it says Uchtavtam amzopetecha, you have to write it. Ktavtam, why ktavtam? Tam means whole, means your ktiva has to be whole. Shelo yichtov alfin ayin alfin, this means you can't switch your ayin and aleph. Betin kefin, kefin betin, bet and kaf. They're basically saying all these letters that look the same. Gimel, tzadin, tzadin, gimel. Right, this is Gimel and Sadi. Dalton, Reshin, Dalton, Reshin, Dalid. Hein, Chetin, Hein. Vavim, Yudin, Vavim, Vav. Zayin, Nun, Zayin, Nun. Tetin, Pepin, Tetin, Pei, and Tet. Kfufin, Pshutin, bent letters or straight letters. Pshutin, Kfufin. Mimin, right, Memim, Samchin, Memim, Samach look very similar. Stumim, Ptuchim, Stumin. Here it says, if it's supposed to be open and you closed it, right? Remember, the mem sofit is sealed. The mem regular is open letter. So that's what they mean by stumim ptuchim. Or parsha ptucha lo yasena stuma. If it's an open parsha where there's difference about how much space is supposed to be between parshiot. There's parshiot, right? If you look in the regular chumash, it says pei or samach, ptucha or stuma. There's different spaces in between each. If it's supposed to be patuach lo yasena stuma lo yasena ptucha. There's a different way the shira is written. As a shira is written, right, with a line, space, line, and then the next line is, we call it bricks, okay, where they build one on the other. Okay, that's the surah of a shira. Otherwise, it's just written regular. So let's say you write the shira the regular way, or you write a regular text the way the shira is supposed to be. O shekatab shelo b'dio, or you didn't use the proper ink. O shekatavata askarot b'zahav, or you wrote them in gold, the names of God, and this means anything you write in the name of in gold, but particularly if you thought maybe it'll be nice, now write the names of God in gold. Hare elu yignizu, all this is bad. So how can it possibly be that a satum that you wrote patuach would be kasher, like Rav Chisda said? So the answer is, and we'll finish with this, Huda Amar ki hai Tana Tanya, he must hold like a different Tana. Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera Omer ne'amar b'sheni niskehem. This is something we've seen before, we'll see again, which is when it comes to Sukkot and all the korbanot every day, it discusses, there's a part of them that's the same every day, but there's a small variant in the words. On the second day, it says niskehem instead of nisacheha. There's an extra mem. In the shishi, instead of niska, on the sixth day, it says Nisacheha, there's an extra yud. And on the last day, it says Kimishpatam instead of Kimishpat, like appears in all the other places. You have a mem, yud, and a mem. Hare, mem, yud, mem, mayim, mikan, remez, lenisuch, mayim, in a Torah. So this is where they find the remez for the fact that we do these water libations on Sukkot because of the extra mem, yud, mem. Now notice, the first mem that was extra was a mem sofit. It was a final mem. And yet we still view it as if it's the beginning of the word. So they say, mida patuach vaso satum kasher, since they view this as if, right, theoretically it should have been a patuach and yet it's closed. Therefore, satum nami, you could say, satum vaso patuach kasher. And therefore we're going to say, Rav Yehuda held like, Rav Chisda held like this Tana of this Braita that shows that it doesn't really matter if they're patuach or satum. Okay, tomorrow we're going to get to more issues about the difference between the men being satum and why specifically they call it satum, sealed, rather than open, whereas again, open means if you look at the thing of the mem, you can actually get inside the letter. In the mem satum, you can't get inside it. We're going to see all sorts of drashot on the formations of the letters, etc. And we'll pick up with that tomorrow.